Hi there, I'm IELTS Master Lee, and this video is on how to start preparing for the IELTS. In this video, I want to talk about strategy and mindset. Having a strategy and plan for starting your IELTS study is very important. In this video, I'll introduce the first things you should do if you need to take the IELTS. So this video is for people who are just starting to think about taking the IELTS test. Having a good mindset, a mindset means way of thinking, is equally important to having a good strategy and plan. In this video, we'll also talk about having and keeping a good mindset throughout your study. All right? Great. So step one, if you're starting to prepare for the IELTS, is to know your goals. It sounds funny, but I've met many students who say, I want to do the IELTS. And I say, okay, why? And they go, or what score do you need? And they go, ooh, I don't know. So knowing what kind of score you need and why you're taking the IELTS is very important. So why are you taking the IELTS? Do you need it for immigration, further study? Maybe you want to go to a university, for work, or perhaps for something else. Maybe you need to transfer a license from one country to another. There are many reasons for taking the IELTS, but it's important for you to know because the reason you take the IELTS affects which test you need. The academic test is very common for universities or further study. If you want to study in the UK or New Zealand or Australia or another country, often you need the IELTS, an IELTS score to get there. However, if you want to immigrate, if you want to move to a new country, you can sometimes also take the general IELTS. The academic is usually okay, but the general is often okay as well. What's the difference? Well, the general IELTS has a different reading and writing section. So the reading and writing on the general IELTS are different. And for many people, the general test reading and writing is a little bit easier than the academic test. All right? And then, of course, very important, what score do you need? What band score do you need? IELTS scores go from 1 to 9, and they have 0.5 scores. So, for example, you could get a 6.5 or a 7.0. It's very important to know what score you need. All right, so why are you taking the IELTS? Which test do you need? And what score do you need? Know your goals. That's step one. Step two is finding your current level. So if you know what you need to do, the next step, most people don't know where to start. I need a 6.5 on the IELTS because I want to study in a university. Where do I start? Well, you start by finding your current level. Where are you at now? If you need a 6.5, but your English is an 8, well, that's easy. But if you need a 6.5 and your current level is a 5.0, well, you need to do a lot of work. So knowing your current level is the first step after you decide your goals. So I recommend that number one, you take a timed IELTS test. And you can find good quality IELTS tests from the Cambridge IELTS series. You can see the pictures on this slide with Cambridge IELTS 11 and Cambridge IELTS 10. And I recommend these books because they're very high quality compared to other publishers. If you want to see a link, you can find links to these books in the description of this video. For speaking, I recommend you record your answers using a computer or cell phone. That way you can check how long your answers are, and later on you can listen to how fluent you are. For writing, you should time yourself and check how many words you were able to write. For task 1, there are 2 tasks for IELTS writing. For task 1, you should finish in about 20 minutes. And for task 2, you should finish in about 40 minutes. So you need to know about how long it takes you for each task. If possible, I also recommend you have your writing checked by an experienced IELTS teacher. It's a good way to know your current score. For speaking and for writing, it's different than listening and reading, because listening and reading, you can check, are you correct? Are you not correct? And then you can calculate your score. For speaking and for writing, the examiner gives you a score based on a paper, and they judge different parts of your writing or your speaking and give you a score based on that. So it's very difficult for you to judge your own speaking or your own writing. You should ask an experienced IELTS teacher to do this. After you take your timed test and you have your score from that, I recommend you take an untimed IELTS test. So do another test without a time limit. This is important because you need to know how big the impact is of time. Is your score becoming worse because you have time? And if it is becoming worse because of time limits, how much? How big is the difference between your scores in the untimed test and the timed test? If you're getting a really, really good score on an untimed test, but you're getting a little bit less of a good score on the timed test, well, then you know time is a problem for you, and you'll need to work on becoming faster. However, I believe that if you can get a good score on an untimed IELTS test, then if you practice, you can definitely get a good score on a timed IELTS test. And the real test is timed. So you do need to be able to do a good timed IELTS test. All right? Just quickly, I want to talk about practice tests, like the Cambridge IELTS tests. Some practice tests, even high-quality ones, are easier or more difficult than others. So sometimes you'll get a high score, sometimes your score will be a little bit lower. Usually your scores are not super different, but sometimes they're a little bit different. This is normal, okay? So don't worry about that. And also, it's important to know that during the real test, you will be nervous. All right, during your practice tests, maybe you don't get so nervous, but during the real test, you will be nervous, especially during the speaking test. If you don't have very much time on the writing test, if you miss an answer on the listening test, if you don't know what to write on the writing test, you're going to become nervous. So you need to practice relaxing before your real test. When you do your practice tests, take a deep breath sometimes to calm yourself down and get over your nervousness. All right? And then make sure you understand how speaking and writing are scored. If you want to know details, you should check out the public band descriptors for scoring details. And I'll link to these in the description of this video. So take a look at these public band descriptors. Step 3, after you know your goals and after you've tested yourself, you need to create a study plan based on what you know. So depending on your level, you may need to improve your overall English to get the score you need on the IELTS. If your practice tests are very, very different than the score you need, you probably need to improve your overall English. Even if you take 50 practice tests, if you don't study English overall, you're not going to get the score you need. So don't just do practice tests. Try to improve your overall English. This means reading every day, memorizing new words, studying grammar, practicing speaking, the kinds of things you would do to improve your overall English, not just for the IELTS test. Other people, maybe your score is really close. You need a 6.5, but currently you have a 6. Sometimes that's an English problem. Sometimes you just need more test practice. So if this is the case, then you need to do a little bit of research on your test weaknesses. Maybe you need to become faster. Maybe one type of reading question is very difficult for you. Whatever this is, you need to know your weaknesses so you can create a study plan to improve yourself on these parts. Learning the IELTS test is important, but improving your English ability is much, much more important. So definitely study and understand the IELTS test. But while you are doing that, make sure you are working hard to improve your English ability, to improve your vocabulary, to improve your grammar, to improve your spoken fluency, your pronunciation, whatever you need help with. Make sure you're working hard to improve these things. And focus on your weak areas. It's really easy to go, I like speaking, I'm good at speaking, I want to speak more. But this isn't going to help you with your writing or your reading on the test. So focus on your weak areas. If your reading score isn't good, work on your vocabulary and read regularly. This is very difficult for some people, but you need to do it. It's very important. All right, let's talk about mindset. We talked a lot about strategy and what you need to do, but let's talk now about how you need to think, because this is just as important. First, there is enough information in books and on the internet to prepare you for the IELTS. However, it is important for your writing and your speaking especially to get help from an expert if you can. All right? If you want to be successful on the IELTS, you need to be patient and persistent. Patient means don't get frustrated. Don't get angry if you don't get a good score right now. Sometimes it takes months. Sometimes it takes years for some people to jump from a 5 to a 7.5. But I have seen students, I know students who they started at a 5 and they kept working and kept working and kept working and studied hard, and eventually they got the score they needed because they were persistent. They continued to work hard over a long period of time. For some people, success takes a lot longer than they want. This is normal. Sorry, but it's not easy to get a really high score on the IELTS. You just need to be persistent and patient. And you need to understand, it is impossible to work on your English every day and not improve. What I mean is, if you continue to work and you really study hard, everyone will improve. It's impossible not to improve. So don't lose motivation. Just keep working every day. And if you miss a day, that's okay. Start again on the next day. Don't lose motivation. If you think you're losing your motivation, send me an email and I'll motivate you more. Keep working on it and you will succeed. But it's important to be patient and persistent. Keep going. And eventually you'll get the score that you need. All right, fantastic. For more IELTS lessons, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find us at youtube.com/IELTSmaster or IELTSmaster.com. And tell me, what do you want to see next? I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Thanks and have a fantastic day.